Well, his film school education and a life spent shoving bootleg tape into a VCR come to Joey's rescue? We'll just have to wait and see. Coming up on AMC's Monsterfest, there's more Godzilla mania. In 1964, American International Pictures released the movie Godzilla vs. the Thing, featuring a poster in which the not-quite-visible thing reaches out from behind the title with dozens of wriggling tentacles. Nobody knows if viewers were disappointed to discover that the thing in question was none other than Mothra, a giant caterpillar turned giant moth who'd been featured in her own movie 3 years before. Here is Godzilla vs. the Thing.
You're watching AMC's Monsterfest. Coming up, the Monsterfest movie marathon continues with the next chapter of horror director Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye. Then, Godzilla takes on South Sea mobsters and a monstrous lobster in Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. Next on AMC.
AMC's Monsterfest, the biggest scare ever, has invaded the internet. Log on to AMCTV.com and click on Monsterfest to enter the scariest interactive site on the web. Expose your mad scientist side by building your own monster. Then send a ghoulish monster e-card to all your friends. Download the Monsterfest screensaver. Then test your knowledge with Monster Trivia and the Monsterfest Encyclopedia. And if that's not enough, download interviews including an exclusive with Monsterfest host Roger Corman. It's all at AMCTV.com. Log on now for the biggest cyber scare ever.
The following is brought to you by the AT&T One Rate 7-cent plan. One simple rate all day, every day.
American Movie Classics presents Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye.
Hello, this is AMC's Monsterfest. I'm your host, Dr. Corman. That's my co-host, Beauty. As part of this year's Monster Festival, I've trapped a pair of interns inside our horror movie library. Our intern, Catherine, is currently trapped in a dubbed Mexi horror movie. Let's see how she's doing. Well, maybe if she'd studied more Mexican horror movies, she'd have known that was coming. We'll have to wait and see if that course in semiotics will save her. Right now, we have more Godzilla mania for you on AMC's Monsterfest. The early career of the King of the Monsters was defined by the work of director Ishiro, or Inishiro, Honda, who in addition to being a prolific director in his own right, was also a lifelong associate of Akira Kurosawa, who made some pretty decent movies himself. Well, coming up is Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, the first of the Godzilla movies directed by Jun Fukuda, who was responsible, some would say to blame, for most of the Godzilla movies made in the 70s. Here's Godzilla, Mothra, and a giant lobster named Ibra in Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. If the English dubbed voice of the character Yashi seemed familiar, that's because it was provided by Hal Linden, who later went on to play Barney Miller. Some careers just peak early, I guess. You can find out more about Godzilla and the other features in this year's Monsterfest by logging on to our website at www.amctv.com. We'll be back with Terror of Mechagodzilla and more troubles for our trapped interns here on AMC's Monsterfest.
The proceeding was brought to you by the AT&T One Rate 7-cent plan. One simple rate all day, every day.
You're watching AMC's Monsterfest. He made household names of Vincent Price and Edgar Allan Poe. Now, Frightmaster Roger Corman delivers his most terrifying creation yet, the Phantom Eye. Then, it's up to Godzilla once again to save the Earth and stop a mechanical menace in Terror of Mechagodzilla. Next. This year, AMC wanted something big for the biggest Monsterfest ever, so we asked legendary horror director Roger Corman to deliver his most diabolical creation yet.
Who?
Himself. This Halloween, watch Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye, a world's premier horror film so big and scary we have to show it to you in 35 pieces. Don't miss a single episode, all Halloween weekend on AMC's Monsterfest.
Sometimes I even scare myself.
The following is brought to you by the AT&T One Rate 7-cent plan. One simple rate all day, every day.
American Movie Classics presents Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye.
Hello, I'm Dr. Corman, and I'm hosting AMC's Monsterfest. That monster over in the closet is Bueller. If you've just joined us, I should mention that as part of our annual Monster Celebration, I've consigned a pair of film students to the depths of our horror movie library. The young lady, Catherine, is currently facing difficulties in a dubbed Mexican horror movie. Our other intern, Joey, is about to be snuffed out by an army of killer plants. Let's see how he's doing. I don't know. Did he look confident to you? I didn't think so. Well, let's hope there's something left when we go back. Next on the menu, more of Godzilla Mania on AMC's Monsterfest. When movies cross national borders, some strange things can happen, especially to their titles. Our last movie, Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, for instance, was released in Germany as Frankenstein and the Monster from the Sea, and in Holland as Mothra, the giant Dracula monster. Well, that's just libelous. The movie we're about to watch, in addition to its 8 English language titles, was called Mecha Kong in Mexico, ignoring the fact that King Kong did not appear in this movie. Apparently, this didn't trouble the Italians either. They called it Destroy Kong, the Earth is in Danger. Here, under one of its English language titles, is Terror of Mechagodzilla. I mentioned that the movie we just saw, Terror of Mechagodzilla, had 8 different titles in English. Why all the titles? The fact is, by the time this movie came out, it seemed as if Godzilla had just about run his course. Well, you know what I always say. If at first a movie doesn't succeed, try changing the title and re-releasing it. Stay with us for AMC's original documentary, Attack of the 50-Foot Monster Mania. Godzilla, of course, had a son in the original series of Godzilla movies named Minya, who had more than a passing resemblance to the Pillsbury Doughboy. Fortunately, the young Godzilla in the new series was destined to grow up fast when his father faced the ultimate challenge. Stay with us for the death of Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Destroyer, coming up next on AMC's Monsterfest.
The proceeding was brought to you by Nationwide Insurance, Financial Services, on your side.
You're watching AMC's Monsterfest. Coming up, the Monsterfest movie marathon continues with the next chapter of horror director Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye. Then, can Godzilla survive an attack by a colossal crustacean? Don't miss the surprise ending of Godzilla vs. Destroyer, next on AMC.
AMC's Monsterfest, the biggest scare ever, has invaded the internet. Log on to AMCTV.com and click on Monsterfest to enter the scariest interactive site on the web. Expose your mad scientist side by building your own monster. Then send a ghoulish monster e-card to all your friends. Download the Monsterfest screensaver. Then test your knowledge with Monster Trivia and the Monsterfest Encyclopedia. And if that's not enough, download interviews including an exclusive with Monsterfest host Roger Corman. It's all at AMCTV.com. Log on now for the biggest cyber scare ever.
You're watching AMC's Monsterfest. I'd stay right where you are because you don't know what's waiting for you in the kitchen.
Stay tuned for more of Roger Corman on AMC's Monsterfest. American Movie Classics presents Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye.
Hello, and welcome back to AMC's Monsterfest. I'm your host, Dr. Gorman, and I'm in charge of AMC's horror movie library, buried deep underground here in Long Island. That's a monster known as Beulah. If you've been watching for a while, you know that we've imprisoned a couple of interns in our horror movie library, and they've been wandering from one movie world to another, facing death. Or, in the case of our young intern, Catherine, currently trapped in a silent movie, a fate worse than death. Let's watch. We'll bid a fond adieu to our beloved giant lizard this weekend with Godzilla vs. Destroyer. This movie finds Godzilla confronting a menace spawned in the very first Godzilla feature. The Destroyer of the title refers to a deadly life form that arose, rather belatedly, from the oxygen destroyer first employed at the climax of the original Godzilla. Of course, what isn't explained, either in this Godzilla movie or in any other, is how Godzilla himself came to survive his first cinematic adventure, since in that very first movie, we see him turn into a skeleton and dissolve away in the depths of Tokyo Bay. But, as with so many things, so it is with Godzilla. Death is not always the end. Here is Godzilla vs. Destroyer. And so the saga of Godzilla is brought to a dramatic conclusion. The radioactive forces that gave him life and power consumed him in the end. Oh, by the way, a new Godzilla movie is in production by Toho, called Godzilla 2000 Millennium, scheduled for release in the year 2000. As I said, death is not always the end. For more information about Godzilla and all the monsters on AMC's Monsterfest, log on to our website at www. Russ Tamblyn, who appeared in this movie, is known to mainstream fans for his roles in films like West Side Story and Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. But for the rest of us, we know and admire him for his appearances in movies like Satan's Sadists, Scream Free, and Necromancer. Russ Tamblyn. He's one of us. Stay tuned. Coming up on AMC's Monsterfest, the world's most famous giant flying reptile, Rodan. And we'll catch up on our two film school interns. If things unfold as I suspect they will, AMC will have 2 vacancies soon.
The proceeding was brought to you by the AT&T One Rate 7-cent plan. One simple rate all day, every day.
You're watching AMC's Monsterfest.
Have you ever seen Roger Corman?
Oh, yeah, he was down here one time offering some guys $20. Yeah, I saw him.
Sir?
Came right out of them woods. Offered me $50 to build the set, run the camera, and play the giant squid.
Join horror legend Roger Corman. For a movie so big and scary, we're going to have to show it to you, like its victims, in tiny pieces.
Is it true Roger Corman once shot 2 movies in the same day?
Well, I heard that he shot 2 movies using the same location.
3!
No. Nobody shoots 3.
This Halloween on AMC's biggest Monsterfest ever, you can sit and face the corner, or you can confront your darkest film-going dreams. Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye.
Now, who'd do that? That's wasting film.
If you've missed any of AMC's original serial movie, Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye, log on to AMCTV.com where you can check out any of the episodes. If you've missed any of AMC's original serial movie, Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye, log on to AMCTV.com where you can check out any of the episodes.
Stay tuned for more of Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye.
You're watching AMC's Monsterfest, the biggest scare ever. He made household names of Vincent Price and Edgar Allan Poe. Now, Frightmaster Roger Corman delivers his most terrifying creation yet, the Phantom Eye. Then, Japan weathers another assault when a mining mishap unleashes the prehistoric fury of Rodan as AMC's Monsterfest continues. American Movie Classics presents Roger Corman's The Phantom Eye.
Hello, welcome back. This is AMC's Monsterfest, and I'm your host, Dr. Gorman. As part of our film festival this year, I've trapped a couple of film students in our horror movie library, and they've been facing death and enduring various indignities in their search for a mysterious missing movie called The Phantom Eye. They have to find it by midnight, and their time, I'm afraid, is growing very short. Joey is being entertained by my own inimitable co-host, Beulah. As for our intern, Catherine, she's about to choose her next adventure.
In the Valley of Corman.
That's Catherine, one of our film school interns, now trapped and menaced unawares by a living mummy. All for your entertainment here on AMC's Monsterfest. Coming up, in 1956, director Ishiro Honda took a break from Godzilla to try his hand at another monster, this one from the skies. Its name in Japanese was Radon, but the American distributors were afraid that that name would be confused with Ray Don, a then popular brand of soap powder. So they swapped the vowels and released it as the great Rodan.